Right, here's some troubleshooting for the RXA internal logging enabled in TDI for TIM 5.1 and 6X. So what we're doing here is we are going to show you a TDI service for a Posix Unix Linux Adapter targeting a service. Note here in the service form we're going to IP address 145 and we're using a pseudo user, the TDI user. This user already exists on the target system. The goal is to get some output here from TDI that goes more into the RXA version info we're using and details some of the connection information from the very start of the connection all the way to the end. So the logging here will be more verbose than your basic IBM.di.log. We're using TDI version 7.1 FixPack 8, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a remote command line function in TDI as assembly line. We're going to set the host connection details. We're going to enable some debug logging for RXA in the assembly line, and then we're going to run a test in TDI in the console, and what we're hoping for is some more debug. We'll then review the log and we can see the connection steps. Here you have the TDI configuration editor, and what we're going to do is create a new project. We're going to give it a sample name. The name's irrelevant. We're just calling this one RXA test. Once we create that RXA test assembly line, we're going to go ahead and create our project, we're going to go ahead and create an assembly line, right? So click on the project name, and then up to the top menu bar, you're going to click New Assembly Line. Give it a sample name. It really doesn't matter what it's called. Once we've created that, we're going to go ahead and create some information tied to that. What we need to do is add the component. So we click on Add Component, and we type in the word remote in the search widget. That brings up the remote command line function. Once we do this, we fill in the host information. I'm going to use the IP address of the target resource I'm going to. Again, this is the target you want to be managing by the iTim Posix Unix Linux Adapter. We're just doing it all inside of TDI. So specify the remote user, specify the password. Note we're not using key phrase authentication. We're just using straight password authentication, SSH. We're using the default port 22. Could be a different port in your example. Just know what you have. And then we're going to run a simple command. Once we execute our connection to that remote host, we want it to display some basic information. It can be any command. As long as your user's privileged to do that and execute it, you know that A, your pseudo user set up, and 2, you can return the results of your query, right? Much like of what Tim's going to do. Here we did a simple list. Once you do that, enable debug logging. We want to get that. And then note the advanced option here on the left-hand side. Highlight that, expand it, and then put a checkbox there for enable that RXA additional logging. Then we run it in command line mode in console, and then it outputs to the screen, right? This is the data we're after. We want to see the initial connection, and we want to see it complete. If there's an error, it's going to spit out the info into this log that's in the console. You can click on the paper icon up at the top of the console, and you can export that all to a text file. Then you can read it and see it easily. In here you can see the RXA method bean session parameter talks to the IP address and gives you details. That's what we want to go for. Here what we're going to do is show you our TDI user on the remote target. We've logged in as that user with a PuTTY session, and then we're just going to execute a command that we want this connector to do as well. So note it has some details there. Well, we know we're in that session. When I run this command line console mode, I should see the same execution inside the log detailed from the beginning all the way to the end. So here's just an example. It iterates through and it dumps it all to the screen. Once it's completed, it'll give you the output of that completed in the log and let you know that I finished with no errors, or I finished with an error. Hopefully you'll see something that gives you some info. Extend the log to a file you can work with, and once you do that, you can then validate some of the info that's in the log that's also relative to your session. Basically, if you can do it through PuTTY and Connect, you should be able to do it through TIM and TDI through the Posix Linux Adapter in your dispatcher log. You should be able to see the same info. Here I'm just validating that the same command that I ran inside of the TDI console is the same command that I can execute native. So it's just a one-to-one, right? The data's really there. That's what you're after. So that log is going to contain more information than you get in the default IBM.di.log, and that'll help your troubleshooting experience. So hopefully this quick tutorial will show you a different way to troubleshoot those connection info, and if this helps you, please like the YouTube video so we can create more of these. Thanks.